What's good everybody, this is CP and welcome to a very special video. Today I'm going to talk about expectations for every NHL team in the Atlantic Division for the 2022-23 NHL season. And before I deep dive into the teams and go into the juicy details, I'm going to quickly break down the tiers and roughly describe what each category means. For the first tier, we have Hunt for Stanley. Basically, it means that teams in this tier should be considered a contender in their division, and the ultimate goal should be hunting for the Stanley Cup. In fact, anything less than a third round appearance should be considered a huge disappointment. The next tier, we have shorter golf season. Basically, for teams in this particular category, they should be good enough to be a playoff team. Maybe not win the cup or go on a super deep run, but a round or two in the playoffs could be very possible. Besides that, they should still have enough time to enjoy most of the off season by a slightly shortened season on the golf course. The next tier I have is the Dark Horse tier. This tier is perhaps the most interesting with the biggest question marks in the division. It will mainly consist of teams with the ability to surprise or overachieve, but at the same time they might tease and disappoint fans by just barely missing the playoffs. The next tier we have is Ponder for Connor. So for teams that fall in the Ponder for Connor tier, if things go south, I think it might be worthwhile for them to ponder for Connor, aka tank for Connor Bedard in the 2023 NHL draft. Because from what many say, Bedard is that next guy, and opportunities like this come around once in a blue moon. So in short, the juice might be worth the squeeze for Connor Bedard in next year's draft. So once again, I'm gonna bring out my low budget division wheel here. To make things more interesting, I'm gonna let this wheel decide which team I'm gonna talk about, so no particular order. Let's give this wheel a spin and see which team we get here. Ladies and gentlemen, the first pick of the Atlantic Division goes to the Buffalo Sabres. So right now, if I had to choose, I would probably put the Buffalo Sabres in the Dark Horse tier. To me, they're one of the more exciting young teams to follow in the NHL next year. And I'll definitely try to find some time to tune into a few games as they finish off the last few months of the season with a very strong record, going 16-9-3. I feel like the Sabres could build on that strong finish and carry the momentum into next season. If we take a look at the roster, I would say that their forward group is low-key stacked with guys like Alex Tuch and Tage Thompson leading the way. And surprisingly, we saw a player like Jeff Skinner resurge into a 30-goal player again, so there's no reason for him not to do that again this upcoming season with a better team around him. Besides that, in terms of upside, I feel like the Sabres have one of the best collection of young players. On offense, they have Dylan Cousins, Peyton Krebs, Casey Middlestat, who are all only getting better. On top of that, they also have a few even younger players like Jack Quinn and JJ Peterka, who in my opinion is another super underrated prospect who looks like he has the ability to be a legit NHL player in the league very soon. Then on defense, they have two young franchise pieces in Rasmus Dahlin and Owen, who should only continue to grow and will likely be a huge presence on their blue line for years to come. Another underrated young defender on their blue line who I really like is Mattias Samuelsson. Chances are, if you don't really follow the Sabres, you probably have never heard of him, but besides Power and Dahlin, I feel like Samuelsson could be that guy that gives the Sabres defense a scary three-headed monster for years to come. So overall, I can see Buffalo being a hungry young team who can steal some games from the big dogs in this division. On the other hand, a wild card playoff spot might not be a lock for the Sabres, but I feel like they might be one step closer this year. However, I must point out that if you aren't a Buffalo Sabres fan and if your favorite team is in the Atlantic Division, then they are probably the one team you don't want to do super bad next year, as you don't want to give them a shot to land a player like Connor Bedard, because if they do end up somehow getting him, then it could be game over for the rest of the division really quick. Could you imagine a future core with Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, Dylan Cousins, and Connor Bedard along with the rest of the other young guys I mentioned above? It could be super unfair for the rest of the teams in this division really quick. Nonetheless, I feel like the Sabres should be a really fun team to watch, and I can see them play spoiler and maybe steal some points and upset a few teams from clinching a playoff spot. So in that, they could also be one of the most unpredictable dark horse teams in the division. What do you think about the Buffalo Sabres? Comment below. And now for our second pick in this division, give the wheel a spin, and we have the Ottawa Senators. So to start things off, what a huge off-season for the Senators. GM Pierre Dorion finally made some big boy moves as he added Claude Giroux and Alex DeBrincat, so both legit 65 plus point players. And all of a sudden, I'm not gonna lie, but their top 6 looks pretty good. And they likely don't have to rely on Stützle and Tkachuk to score as much as they did in the past few years. Many Ottawa fans would also tell you that Doran actually did well by offloading Matt Murray's contract, because for whatever reason, Murray struggled big time as an Ottawa Senator, and it looked like it was time for both sides to move on. As a result, I feel like Ottawa also upgraded their goaltending by bringing in a guy like Cam Talbot. Despite being older than Murray, many would argue that he's an upgrade from Murray, so we'll see how things pan out this season. On defense, I feel like fans should also be excited to watch out for a young defender like Jake Sanderson. The former 5th overall pick might be ready to step in as a full-time NHL player this season, and as you already know, they already have Thomas Chabot, so adding Jake Sanderson into that group should make that defense that much better. Compared to the Buffalo Sabres, I would say that the Ottawa Senators might be a few steps ahead and is a little closer to a playoff spot, especially since they added a player like Claude Giroux who is ready to win now. It's also important to point out that they finished second last in the Atlantic Division last year, but I don't think that'll be the case this year. If I had to guess, optimistically speaking, I could see them being a borderline wildcard team. If not, I could still see them with a shot to be a top 5 team in the Atlantic Division. So if all goes well in Ottawa, then out of the 4 playoffs teams from last year, I feel like the Senators have a chance to bounce out a team like the Bruins out of a playoff spot. It might not happen, but if it does, I feel like Boston might be the most likely victim. So in this particular division, it seems like Ottawa might be the strongest dark horse teams others should look out for. So let's go back to the wheel again and pick number 3. Let's see who we get. The Detroit Red Wings. Another young, exciting team. So it looks like the wheel wants me to get through all the younger teams right away, but that's okay. This one is very interesting, but if I had to pick a category, then I would actually put them in the dark horse tier as well. Because as of right now, I see them somewhere between the Ottawa Senators and the Buffalo Sabres. Perhaps maybe not as good as the Sens, but maybe slightly better than Buffalo. In case you missed it, Steve Yzerman had a pretty busy summer and brought in some major upgrades to the roster, including Andrew Kopp, David Perron, and Dominic Kubalik up front. He also added Ben Sherratt on the blue line and was able to lock up one of the hottest free agent goalies in Philly Husso in net. So overall, on paper, they look way deeper, and all of a sudden, it looks like they can be very competitive this year. I feel like those roster moves are necessary, and Yzerman knows exactly what he's doing, as bringing in those guys will help insulate and buy more time for the young stars like Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider. The Red Wings finished 6th in the division last year with a sub 500 record, but I see them as one of the teams, along with the other 2 dark horse teams I mentioned above, most likely fighting for the 4th or 5th spot in the division this year. So simply put, it's going to be a very interesting dogfight in this division, and for the general hockey fan, I feel like this would be one of the more intense divisions to keep an eye on, especially later on in the season. Like the Ottawa Senators, I feel like playoffs are not guaranteed for the Detroit Red Wings, but I feel like they'll be very close, as in my opinion, the Detroit Red Wings is one of the teams that should be trending up in the next 2 to 3 years. So for my next pick, I'm getting the Boston Bruins. This is another interesting team. From what we saw last year, I feel like they should be a little bit higher than the first 3 teams, so I'll probably put them in the shorter golf season tour. AKA, I still see them as a playoff team again this year, but things might be a lot tougher for them to lock up a spot. Overall, they had a decent year last year. They made the playoffs once again, but compared to many teams in this division that are actually on the uptrend, I feel like the Boston Bruins are headed in the opposite direction. They still have some nice pieces in Brad Marchand, Charlie McAvoy, and Taylor Hall. However, I don't think it's realistic to see them as a legit contender to come out of this division, as their window probably might have closed. 2019 might have been their last shot, especially if you look at their star players. Marchand is 34, and if Patrice Bergeron comes back, he'll be 37. So the real question is, are their stars good enough to compete with the other big dogs in this division? I'm not too sure. Also, if you look at other parts of the roster, they're definitely not as deep as they used to be up front or on the blue line. Ideally, I see them as a one-round team, and if they don't make any big moves, I would be very surprised to see them make it out of the second round and make a deep run in the playoffs next year. However, I must point out that if things do go south early, I don't think it might be a bad idea for them to tank for at least 1 year to give themselves a shot at Bedard. I mean, I think it might finally be time for them to have another young superstar to build around, because it has definitely been a minute. Moving on, the next team I have for my wheel is going to be the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now the Lightning is very interesting. Some of you might not agree and say that they're on the downtrend, but I still have them in the hunt for Stanley Division. Because despite losing in the Cup Finals, Tampa had another strong season. And heading into this year, it's hard to bet against them. So I have to keep things realistic, and I have to see them take a step backward or fail in the playoffs to downgrade their tier. And yes, they lost a few players in the summer, but their main core of Steven Stamkos, Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, Victor Hedman, and now Mikhail Sergachev is still intact. Most importantly, they also have Vasilevsky in net, aka one of the best goaltenders in the world. So granted that his play doesn't depreciate that fast, then I feel like as long as Vasilevsky is healthy, Tampa has a chance to beat anyone on any given night. To me, the key factor for the Lightning's success is to be able to find the right complementary players to surround their main core. And I feel like if they're able to do that at the trade deadline with their assets or draft picks, then they should have another chance at a championship. And overall, I feel like they still have a 2 to 3 year window to make a few more runs. So heading into this season, if they don't make it past the second round, then I would say it would be somewhat of a disappointment for this core as they're just too good. Next up, we have the Florida Panthers. I feel like they should definitely be in the hunt for Stanley tier, especially since their main core is still very young with guys like Barkov, Reinhart, Bennett, Ekblad, and now Matthew Tkachuk, all 26 years old or under. To me, their cup window should be at least 3 to 4 more years, but whether they're able to get past the Tampa Bay Lightning and other teams in the Metro Division is probably another question that Panther fans have to worry about. Now, you probably have heard a lot about the Tkachuk trade, and no lie, he's a great player, but I'm not sure if the trade makes the Florida Panthers that much better this season, because in the deal they actually lost a few key pieces, as Huberdeau had built amazing chemistry with the other forwards, especially Barkov, over the past few years, and from the stats it shows that his playmaking ability was a huge reason why Florida had so many 20 goal scorers last year. Besides that, I feel like losing Mackenzie Weegar is probably a huge loss on their blue line, as he's a legit 22-minute 40-point defenseman. So who knows, maybe the young guys in Florida steps up, and I could be completely wrong, so we'll see. To me, the expectation is that they should be able to make a deeper run and possibly a third round team. If they get bounced again early in the second round or even the first round, then I feel like someone might have to get fired in Florida. What do you think about the Panthers? Next, we'll go all the way up to Quebec and take a look at the Montreal Canadiens. Now, I hope I don't piss off any Canadian fans here, but I would probably put them in the Ponder for Connor tier. No doubt they had a very busy offseason and made a lot of changes, and at the draft, they possibly found their next franchise player in Juraj Slafkovsky. To me, the kid looks very special and could be a dominant player for the Canadiens for many years. But to keep things real, if you take a look at their roster, many would agree that they are not built to win now. To be honest, their offense doesn't look too bad or horrible on paper, and I think young guys like Suzuki, Caufield, and now Slafkovsky will be very fun to watch for the next few years. However, to me, their defense might be their biggest problem. On paper at least, I feel like it's a lot weaker than the Shea Weber and Jeff Petrie era. On top of that, perhaps the biggest question mark for me probably is their goaltending. If Carey Price doesn't return, then I really have a hard time seeing the Canadiens have much success with what they have right now. Also, if he does return, how good will he be, and can he be the Stanley Cup Finals Carey Price good? I'm not too sure. Yeah, so let's assume that Carey Price is done and he never returns. If that's the case, I'm not sure how the Canadiens are able to replace him, because players like Price don't really grow on trees, and most teams are lucky if they're able to land someone like him once in a decade. So if things go south early in Montreal, I think giving themselves a shot at Connor Bedard would be a very, very good gamble, because if they land Bedard and add him to the young core they already have in Suzuki, Caufield, and Slafkovsky, then I feel like their rebuild process would be extremely accelerated and could be cut short a few years. Next, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs. Some of you might disagree with me big time on this one, but instead of having the Leafs in the hunt for Stanley tier, I'm gonna go ahead and put them in the shorter golf season tier. And just hear me out here. I still see the Leafs as a playoff team, but I'm still not convinced that they can make a deep run this year. Yes, we all know that the Leafs are a great team, especially in the regular season. Actually, probably an elite team. But since Matthews and Marner joined the Leafs 6 seasons ago, they have yet to get past the first round. So it's hard for me to expect them to jump from that to hunt for the Stanley Cup this upcoming season. It's kind of like expecting someone to get a Grand Slam home run while they haven't even got past first base yet. So until I see the Leafs get past first base, I have a hard time considering them a legit cup contender. And yes, the Colorado Avalanche looked very dominant this year, and some of you may not realize that they actually struggled to get past the second round for years. So in my opinion, the Leafs might have a bigger problem, especially in this division. As I said before, Tampa looks like they will still be good for at least 2 to 3 more years. Meanwhile, Florida's cup window should be wide open right now. And we also can't forget that teams like the Ottawa Senators, Buffalo Sabres, and the Detroit Red Wings are quickly on the way. So there's always a chance that those 3 younger teams can catch up to Toronto and make their hunt for Stanley that much harder. To me, the main goal for the Leafs this season should be to get past the first round and possibly go deep in the second. Otherwise, I could see some big changes coming with the organization and probably a lot of people not working for the Leafs after next season. If we take a look at the final picture here, I feel like the Atlantic is going to be a very, very interesting division. A few things that I would probably look out for is, can the Florida Panthers take that next step? Meanwhile, can the Boston Bruins hang on to a playoff spot? And can the Maple Leafs finally get past the first round? And if we take a look at the dark horse tier, those 3 teams will probably be very interesting to watch. And one thing to keep an eye on is how much damage a team like Ottawa can do, and perhaps even go on a crazy run and unexpectedly steal a playoff spot from someone else. It's still very early, but to me, it might be Tampa's division to lose. And yes, they're getting a little bit older, but I would be really surprised if they get eliminated early from the playoffs next year. So what do you think about the Atlantic division? Make sure you share your thoughts below. Do you agree or disagree with everything I said in this video? Make sure you let me know in the comments below. And if you like, feel free to call me out as well. If you want to watch more of my crappy videos, then make sure you click the links on the side right here.